And these governments have realized that if they can't completely eliminate the police force and leave the population defenseless, then they can discredit the police, at the very least. They can turn law enforcement into a laughingstock, eliminate its legitimacy that way. Around a decade ago, when viral videos were just starting to become commonplace, a woman uploaded a video entitled 10 Hours of Walking in NYC as a Woman. Like many viral videos, it wasn't actually as spontaneous as it looked. It was the brainchild of an anti-harassment organization by the name of Holla Back, along with an ad agency called Rob Bliss Creative. And the premise, as the name of the video implies, is that a young white woman named Shoshana Roberts would walk around New York, all areas of Manhattan, they said, wearing jeans and a crew neck. She wouldn't say anything to anyone. In front of her, someone would be carrying a hidden camera, which would capture all of the misogynistic men who would inevitably catcall her. So it was intended to be feminist propaganda, in other words, and you might remember the video, but if not, just for context, here's some of it. Watch.
How you doing today? Wow. That's not good.
Wow.
What's up, beautiful? Have a good day. Hey, what's up, girl? How you doing? Somebody's acknowledging you. They're beautiful. She said thank you.
Oh, bless you. Hey, baby.
Hey, beautiful. How are you this morning?
Have a nice evening.
Nice. Damn. Damn.
I'm beautiful. God bless. Sexy American Eagle.
Hello, good morning. God bless you. Have a good day, all right?
Doing good?
Hey, look at that. It's $5,000. Yeah, bro. You want to talk? Huh? We can't be friends or nothing? You don't speak? If I give you my number, you can talk to me? No? Too ugly for you?
According to the caption on the video, to her horror, this woman was catcalled more than 100 times in just 10 hours. And after releasing this piece of groundbreaking investigative journalism, the feminists who created it were convinced that they had a real winner on their hands. It was being shared everywhere. People were horrified by the plight of women in New York City. But very quickly, the mood changed. Leftists noticed that, inconveniently enough, pretty much every single catcaller in the video was black or Hispanic. There was one white guy who said something like nice, although it wasn't even clear if he was talking to her or not. In any event, he's clearly respectful. He keeps things moving. He simply compliments her, if that's what he did, and he continues walking. By contrast, there were dozens of black and Hispanic catcallers in the video, and they went far beyond saying nice. One of the black guys follows her down the street for 5 minutes, staring at her the entire time. Another person of color, as we say, tells her to say thank you more. Another guy says, God bless you, mommy. And you know what this means. It means that this video was determined to be highly racist. NPR and Slate, among many other left-wing publications, ran lengthy pieces on how problematic the video was. The author Roxane Gay, for example, wrote, the racial politics of the video are effed up. Like, didn't she walk through any white neighborhoods? Now, never mind the fact that she walked all over Manhattan, which the footage clearly shows. As the hysteria grew, the organization that produced the video released a groveling and very confusing statement of apology, which threw their own video under the bus. Quote, we regret the unintended racial bias in the editing of the video that overrepresents men of color. We're committed to showing the complete picture. It is our hope and intention this video will be a start of a series to demonstrate that the type of harassment we're concerned about is directed toward women of all races and ethnicities and conducted by an equally diverse population of men. Now, over on Reddit, the ad agency added, quote, we got a fair amount of white guys, but for whatever reason, a lot of what they said was in passing or off camera. Now, obviously, one of the biggest issues with this claim is that everything in the video was in passing or off camera, so it doesn't make sense to claim that the white people were edited out for that reason. Nor does it make any sense to state that in the future they'll be committed to demonstrating that catcallers are from a, quote, equally diverse population of men. After all, they just captured video demonstrating via a recorded experiment that catcallers apparently are not, in fact, diverse. Certainly not equally diverse. So what's the basis for saying that in the future they'll prove that white people are just as likely to catcall women? Which, by the way, this was years ago. They never were able to prove that. Now, they don't have any basis for saying that, of course, because it's not true. Catcalling women to the point that they become uncomfortable, sort of like playing music loudly on a Bluetooth speaker at the park or committing armed robbery, is one of those behaviors that, from a statistical perspective, simply isn't perfectly distributed among various ethnic groups. Even if you tried to stack the deck by conducting this experiment in a neighborhood that's like 100% white, it still wouldn't work. In fact, it would probably only prove the opposite conclusion, because we all know that a woman can walk through a predominantly white suburb, not just for 10 hours, but like for 10 years and maybe never get catcalled at all. So that was the real lesson of 10 hours of walking in NYC as a woman, even though the ad agency would never admit it. They prove rather publicly that different demographic groups engage in catcalling at very different rates and in very different ways also, it turns out. And so ever since the publication of this video, in the name of racial justice, leftists have mostly stopped talking about catcalling. They've kind of left the topic alone. But as we all know, every lesson of history must be relearned at some point. It's sort of like the old maxim, never fight a land war in Asia. Everyone agrees it's a bad idea, but eventually someone else tries again to disastrous results. And indeed, that's the case with catcalling. So once again, leftists are trying to make a big deal out of catcalling. They're back on the catcalling bandwagon. Specifically in England, the Surrey Police Department recently sent undercover policewomen out on the streets in jogging clothes in a sting operation in an attempt to elicit catcalls. Yes, this is real. They actually did this. And then when the policewomen were catcalled, backup cars swoop in like a drug bust. Watch.
These women aren't friends out for a run. They're actually undercover police officers taking to the streets in Surrey as part of a new operation trying to stop people catcalling and harassing female runners.
We get honked at, the staring, the hanging out of the window just to look at us, and it's so prevalent.
And police teams are ready to intervene the moment the officers are beeped at, followed or shouted at, pulling people over.
Those kind of behaviours may not be criminal offences in themselves, but they still need to be addressed. And of course, the people that are likely to commit those kind of behaviours, they may then go on to commit more serious offences.
Well, they've convinced me. The policewoman, a woman is constantly being told by strangers that she's attractive, and that is a horrible, horrible thing. It's hard to imagine anything worse than receiving unsolicited compliments, frankly. From Congress to your children's schools, there's a culture war raging across America. For the moms watching, I don't have to tell you this, you're living it. That's why I want to make you aware of Concerned Women for America, the nation's largest public policy Christian women's organization. For 45 years, they've been leading the charge as your voice in all levels of public policy. CWA knows what a woman is. CWA trains women to become grassroots leaders, speak into the culture, pray, testify, and lobby. From their Young Women for America collegiate chapters to moms, professionals, and mature women, they're the most influential women's organization in our nation. That's why I'm asking you to support their efforts today. For a donation of $20 or more, you'll get a copy of their new book written by the CEO and president, Penny Nance, A Women's Guide, 7 Rules for Success in Business and Life. This book's an incredible gift for any young woman graduating or beginning her professional journey. Go to concernedwomen.org/Walsh for your copy. Again, that's concernedwomen.org/Walsh. And indeed, you can see the abject pain and horror in her voice as she's having to process all of this. I mean, last week I upset some people by suggesting that female cops shouldn't be out on patrol because they lack the strength and other attributes necessary for that job. But I guess I should revise my statement. I mean, this is one job, walking around and fishing for compliments, that female cops are highly suited for. And they do have apparently at least the strength and wherewithal to withstand the deep horrors of being complimented. Unlike with men, you walk around in public your whole life as a man, and you'll probably never, ever be complimented randomly by a stranger. You'll never hear a compliment ever from anyone. And women, we're supposed to believe, hear compliments all the time, and somehow the women have the harder deal there. When you're constantly being complimented, according to you, men are never complimented. It's harder to always be complimented. Really? Anyway, it's enough to make you wonder what would happen if some police officers are assigned to this detail and they got no catcalls whatsoever. Would they be giving interviews about how happy they are about the fact that no one in the entire city during their 8-hour shift bothered to compliment them? Is that the conversation that would take place back at the station? It seems doubtful, but we can't say. Like, we're supposed to pretend that these undercover cops who were going out looking for catcall, we're supposed to pretend that those women didn't want to be catcalled. We're supposed to pretend that they wouldn't have been horrifically embarrassed and offended if they weren't catcalled at all. We're supposed to pretend that. In any event, in the video, they admit that catcalling isn't even criminal, which raises the obvious question of why the police are doing this. They explain that in truth, they're just trying to wag their finger at people who catcall because catcalling is like a gateway drug to more criminal activity. Apparently, people who catcall are more likely to commit murder and tax evasion and arson and so on. I mean, one minute you're telling a woman she looks pretty, the next minute you're, robbing a bank and shooting the bank teller. I mean, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. But even if that's true, and there's not much evidence that it is, it still doesn't come close to justifying a police stop. I mean, if the police are allowed to pull you over because you might commit a future crime in their judgment, then, that's when you have a police state, which the left always pretends they're concerned about. And of course, that's exactly what the UK has become. They've become the kind of left-wing version of a police state. But as it turns out, contrary to what's stated in the video, some people are indeed being arrested in the UK as part of this sting operation. The Telegraph reports, quote, Surrey police said the approach was designed to protect women and girls in public places. According to the force, the operation, which lasted a month, led to 18 arrests for offenses such as harassment, sexual assault, and theft. Now, the implication, I guess, is that they picked up people with outstanding warrants for assault and theft, since there's no indication that these officers were actually attacked during their runs. But what's notable about this report and every other report like it is that we don't have any information about the identities of the offenders. They also don't explain what conduct constitutes harassment exactly. Instead, they simply state that this was a 1-month trial for a sting operation, which has now concluded. So there was more transparency from a viral video produced by feminists a decade ago in New York City than the British police are willing to provide about their taxpayer-funded catcalling bust. Now, we can all draw the obvious conclusion here. It's almost certain that this particular sting operation backfired, just like that viral video did. They came up with this plan in order to entrap heterosexual white men who shout compliments at attractive women. I mean, that was the point. It was a way to get heterosexual white men in prison. That's what they were trying to do. That's the great crime that British police decided to spend their time on. Something that isn't even a crime at all. In fact, in many cases, it's not even morally objectionable if all you're saying is a polite compliment to somebody. And yet, in their bid to criminalize heterosexuality and to lock up white men for non-crimes, the British police probably realized to their horror that the worst and most aggressive catcallers, the real menaces of the catcalling community, were not white at all. And therefore, this operation will end and it will never be resumed again. That we can all assume that that's probably what happened. And it's not really a guess, because this is how things work in Britain. For many years, the British government concealed the systematic sexual abuse of children that was being committed right out in the open by foreign gangs in England and Wales. According to one recent report prepared by UK government official Louise Casey, quote, we found that the ethnicity of perpetrators is shied away from and is still not recorded for 2/3 of perpetrators. We found many examples of organizations avoiding the topic altogether for fear of appearing racist, raising community tensions, or causing community cohesion problems. With the protection of the government, so-called grooming gangs have operated with impunity in the UK. The normal tactic that these gangs used, as Casey's report notes, was for men to target vulnerable adolescent children, often those in care or children with learning or physical disabilities. Those children were then drugged, passed among various men, and transported via taxis through the country to other clients. That's how these gangs operated. The total number of victims is unknown because most of these perpetrators have never been caught, but a recent estimate suggests that a minimum of 700 children were victims of group-based child sexual exploitation in the UK in 2023 alone. Roughly 1,400 children were sexually abused by men in the UK in the UK town of Rotherham between 1997 and 2013. Again, that's just in one town. In several cases, the police also participated in the sexual assault. They also made it clear that they were extremely uninterested when victims came forward. Watch.
One evening in 2006, a 12-year-old girl went into this police station. She reported that she had been molested in a local graveyard. The police officers here told her to sober up and come back later.
Police turned the girls away.
As she left, she was accosted by two further men who took her away in a car and raped her. They gave her money for a bus fare and dropped her in the streets in this town in Greater Manchester. She was picked up by another man.
Detectives were discouraged from investigating the crimes.
Many senior police officers were fearful of intervening because they may be branded racist.
Now, in response to the latest government report on this scandal, police told the BBC that they had, quote, a dedicated team of detectives working on this case who have worked diligently to explore all lines of inquiry. That was the response just a few weeks ago in July of this year. So they're claiming it's a top priority for them. And yet, just a couple hours away in Surrey, the police are busy trying to arrest catcallers. They're chasing down men who honk at women, even though there's nothing criminal about that. Not that we should really be surprised by this. Sociopathic sting operations in the service of extremely dumb policies that happen to target native white citizens are becoming the norm in police departments all over the country and all over the Western world. In fact, in Canada, they're rounding up people who try to hike in the woods. We talked about that yesterday, handing out $30,000 fines. In Australia, as we also have discussed, they've essentially outlawed prayer. If you try to pray with a guy who thinks he's really a woman or vice versa, you could face a decade's worth of prison time. In fact, parents can't even pray with their children under the law. Now, there's no way to make sense of any of these crackdowns without recognizing that the governments of the West harbor a deep and abiding disdain for the native populations of their respective countries. And these governments have realized that if they can't completely eliminate the police force and leave the population defenseless, then they can discredit the police at the very least. They can turn law enforcement into a laughingstock, eliminate its legitimacy that way. It's the same reason the police chief in D.C. can barely understand English, as we talked about yesterday. In other words, the latest war on policing, incredibly enough, is one that the police themselves are participating in. Police departments can either realize what's going on and refuse to participate in the charade, or they can continue to contribute to their downfall, one extremely ill-advised sting operation at a time. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.